I'm Chad McCallum, and this is the third module in 10 ways to build web services in .NET. In this module, we'll be discussing WCF web services. So as a quick outline for the module, we're going to do a brief introduction to WCF. We'll then spend a little bit of time understanding WCF configuration. We'll go over the service and operation contract attributes that we use to define a service and its methods. We'll then define and implement our own service contract and operation contract. We'll use a utility called the WCF test client to test our web service. We'll then add a service reference to our client referring to our created web service. Once we have the service reference, we can call our web service using the generated proxy classes. And then we'll give a brief review at the end. So WCF web services, WCF actually stands for the Windows Communication Foundation. It's a framework introduced by Microsoft in the .NET platform for message-based communication on both the client and server sides. It supports multiple transports and encodings, transports like SOAP over HTTP, which is what we'll be using for our web service. It also supports TCP, named pipes, MSMQ, and peer-to-peer communication. For encodings, it supports things like text, binary, XML, and a few other options. It's also an extensible framework that you can write your own transports and encodings for. It originally shipped with .NET 3.0, and it's used by several Microsoft server technologies like Workflow Foundation, BizTalk Server, the Silverlight Rich Internet Application Framework, App Fabric, and a few other technologies. For WCF service, they use the concept of contracts to define functionality. A service contract is used to define the capabilities of each specific service, and the operation contract defines the arguments and return values of those specific operations. There's also the concept of a data contract, which defines the type and the format of the data being both sent and received from and to the server. WCF also has a heavy reliance on configuration. Because it supports so many different transports and encodings and technologies, they have a heavy reliance on the config files to control exactly how the client and the server communicate. There's a few terminologies associated with this. First is an endpoint. That's an address where a server can send and receive data. Second is the concept of a binding. This defines the transport and the encoding for each individual endpoint. And the last one is the behavior. This controls more of the runtime behaviors for a service, endpoint, operation, or client. These behaviors are important. They can influence things like throttling, credentials, error handling, metadata generation, and a few other features. In addition, those behaviors can be set at the global, service, endpoint, and operation contract level.